Okay, right. So I think we are ready to start. It is just about 5 o'clock. As you can see, I'm wearing a bit of a Santa hat this week. The lighting's a bit off. Um, I might try and adjust the lighting so you can see me a little bit better, but that's not necessarily a guarantee. Um, Obviously, the background at the moment is a lot different to what a lot of you who have tuned in long term are probably used to. I wanted to make sure that I was on time for the stream this evening, so I'm actually still in my office at work. I can see a few people have already joined. Hi, Akila. Good to see you this evening. Thanks for joining the stream. T, always good to see you. Like to see, well, love to hear that you like the hat. um, really glad that you're happy that you finished all your mocks. I'm sure that you tried your very best with them, and I'm sure they went well. Fingers crossed that they went well. And even if they don't go the way that you wanted them to, it's not a problem at all because, again, it's always just an opportunity for you to learn and to grow. Lyrics, good to see you as well. Hello, hope you're well. Great to see so many of you have tuned in for another Study Skills Squad. And because a lot of you have just finished your mock exams, I suppose it's really appropriate that we're going to talk today all about the importance of taking a break, really, so that you don't burn out, because I know that can be really, really challenging. Funnily enough, that's something that I often struggle with now, and I struggled with as a student. So it's definitely going to be a really interesting topic to discuss today. As I also agreed in first the first half, we're going to talk about the importance of taking breaks and time management, etc. And then in the second half, I actually have a few questions from a biology past paper, since there was a bit of demand to go over some past paper questions. So I thought, why not? Let's go over some biology past paper questions as well. So a bit of a mix. Um, so it's going to be an interesting session. So it's great to see so many of you have joined. Um, Lyrics, great to hear that you had your last mock yesterday. Um, but you have it next week. Okay, well, fingers crossed for your mock next week. I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. I'm sure you'll smash it all the same. Do your absolute best. That's really the main thing at the end of the day. But it's great to see so many of you here this evening. Hope you're all well. It's getting really cold as well. The funny thing is, just the other day, I was talking about how I've not had to use de-ice on my car at all, and as if by a pathetic fallacy for those of you doing GCSE English literature, there was just ice all over my car, so I had to spend a good 10 minutes in the cold just sort of scraping it all off. Um, so there you go. So I hope you're all staying warm. It is getting really, really cold. You got 1 mark off a 6. Okay, well that's really good. So a 5 is still really good. And obviously, what you get from that is the opportunity to see where you lost marks. It really just goes to show that you're capable of getting a 6, if not higher. It's just a few little bits here and there for you to address, but really well done. That's a really good score. And thank you, T, for also reiterating that. It is still a really, really good score, and I'm sure you'll know what to do next time. I'm totally in agreement with you there, T. It's just about using those results to feed back into your revision, like we've talked about in our study squad for the past few sessions. I'm sure you'll smash it the next time. That's the most important thing. So well done there. I think we're going to give it another 2-3 minutes or so just for introduction, just for everyone to get relaxed, and then we'll get right into it. Going to talk all about the importance of taking a break, and really just talking about a few skills that might help you time manage. Because I know a lot of students often say things like, "I don't have time to take a break," and that is probably one of the more challenging aspects of revision and about preparing for your exams, because not knowing when to take a break can often mean that you burn out, and it can mean that you can't really revise as efficiently as you'd like to. So that's going to be the topic for today's session. Um, and T, you've said that you're okay. So you're bad at time management, especially when it comes to taking a break. Well, just as well that you've joined us for this week, because hopefully you'll be able to get some nice tips and tricks that you can utilize moving forward. I know I've told this story before, but I remember Um, and this was when I was in year 12. I had a past paper, no, a mock exam that I had to do. And in doing the mock exam, essentially, I fell asleep because I didn't necessarily know how to take a break when I was revising for it. And I got a score that was much less than what I wanted to. So, um, take it from me, don't do all nighters. It doesn't really help, especially if you fall asleep when you're doing the paper that you've spent all night revising for. Um, so that's what I would say there. So, Lyrics, you've said that if you take breaks, you feel really bad. Well, that's the important thing. You don't want to feel bad. Ultimately, taking a break, and the same goes to you as well, T, taking a break is really important and it's deserved. If you've worked hard, there's no reason why you shouldn't take a break. And even if you feel, actually, I don't think I've worked hard enough, it's still okay to take a break. Breaks aren't earned, ladies and gentlemen. They are just as important as the sleep that you have, hopefully, every single day. You know, your body needs a break. Your mind needs a break. If anything, you owe it to yourself to have a break. Um, but no, thank you for sharing that because it's really interesting that some of you share those types of thoughts and feelings, and hopefully, those are thoughts and feelings that we can address today. So thank you for sharing some of that. But you shouldn't feel bad at all. I can understand how because I used to as well, and even now when I'm at work, I do feel bad occasionally if I do take a break. But it's important that we as a collective try and reset the way that we view breaks. Okay, and so we're definitely going to be talking about that today. I think we'll give it another 2, 3 more minutes or so, just in case anyone else rolls in. Um, but by all means, get a cup of tea if you haven't already, or a hot chocolate. Um, I personally quite like the Costa festive drinks. Have any of you had the Costa festive drinks this year? Um, I had the Toblerone latte really recently. I thought that was okay. I think I prefer the hot chocolate personally. I'm not sponsored by Costa at all, just so you know. Wish I was, but I'm not. Um, but yeah, by all means, if you need to get comfortable, um, yeah, and get a hot drink. It's definitely really cold, so definitely get a hot drink. Um, yeah, no, T. I think they're really good. I think they're really, really good drinks. The Toblerone hot chocolate was quite nice. The Toblerone latte was a bit middle of the road. You can't go wrong with a good gingerbread latte. That's always a nice go-to. If I'm ever unsure, I'll always get a gingerbread latte. That is one of my favorite types of drinks. In all honesty, especially around this time of year. Hence the Santa hat. Um, yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Let's see. But I think we're going to get started. Yeah, I think we should get started. Let's just roll into it. And if anyone else joins, then by all means, they can join partway through, and they can always watch this back. Like I always say at the beginning of every study squad, firstly, thank you so much for joining. There isn't a stream without you guys, so I like to thank you all for joining this evening. I'd like to thank you all for participating because it means that I'm not just having a conversation at you, I'm having a conversation with you. And between us, we can build different skills and mindsets that can help you be more effective students and can really help you achieve the grades and the level of success that you're striving for and that I know you are all more than capable of achieving. So thank you for joining. Secondly, this is actually the penultimate study squad session. The next week's one is the last one, which is a shame because I have really enjoyed them. But I'm sure my tutor will roll out something similar again in the future. And if they do, then as you can imagine, I'll be the first person to put their hands up and say, yeah, I'll happily do another squad again. Again, just a reminder, you can always join Olivia's Maths GCSE squads. They are on a Monday at 5 p.m. You can also join Fliss's coding ones on a Tuesday at 5 p.m. And obviously, there's mine on a Thursday at 5 p.m. So do make sure that you join as many as you can because they are actually coming to an end. This is the penultimate one, with next week being the last one. So, um, but you know they're always recorded, so you can always check out the My Tutor YouTube channel where you can rewatch these as many times as you like. So um, don't worry, even if you didn't catch it live, you can always watch it back. But without further ado, let's get started. Let's jump straight into it. So, we are going to talk today about the importance of taking breaks and about taking care of yourself. Because it is really, really important. And I know it's really challenging as a student to sort of try and find that boundary between, am I revising enough or am I taking too many breaks? It's a minefield when it comes to figuring it out. And ultimately, to what I would say to that is it is a balance. And it's about making sure that you don't burn yourself out, because if you do, it can become really challenging to come back from that. But I did want to sort of start off by just everyone having a bit of a discussion. So everyone sharing as much as possible. What do all of you find challenging about balancing things? And I guarantee you, a lot of the answers that we'll see in the live chat will be very, very similar. I'm sure there's going to be a really similar theme. And I know Lyrics and T, you've been absolutely wonderful thus far, and you've shared some of your opinions on and feelings about what you find challenging about balancing and about taking breaks. But I just want to sort of explore that a little bit more. What are some of the feelings that you have when it comes to taking a break? Does anyone tell you to take a break? Do you tell yourself to take a break? I just want to explore what all of you think and feel about pacing yourselves when it comes to studying, when it comes to revision. Um, so that's what I want to see. So, Lyrics, you've said that you compare yourself, or comparing yourself, you compare yourself to others who do really well, and it makes you want to keep trying and not take breaks. And sometimes breaks seem useless. Okay, so what I'm going to do actually is I am going to write down a few key words that crop up. Okay, so one word that comes up from Lyrics, from what you said, is useless and comparison. Okay, so I'm going to write those down. T, you've said balancing the revision time with all your subjects. If you revise too much, your parents will always tell you to take a break, but you feel bad. So I'm going to write down the word bad as well. I'm going to write that word down as well. And we might start to see a bit of a pattern here, but we'll see how we get on. So thank you, Lyrics and T, for sharing those. By all means, you're more than welcome to share as much else as you'd like. And anyone else who has joined us this evening, do also share how you feel and what your opinions are about taking breaks. Do you feel bad about them? Do you not take breaks? Do people tell you to take breaks? What's your general perspective? I'm going to add my perspective on this as well. I find that when I'm told to take a break by others, I tend to feel less than, actually. Sometimes I feel less than. So I'm going to write that word down as well. I'm going to write, the words less than. Lyrics, you've said that if you're in the middle of revising, you take a break, you then don't want to revise again because you lose motivation. Okay, so we're going to write down lose motivation as well. Okay, so we're going to write all these down. Now, by all means, while I say what I'm saying, if anyone else wants to add more, then by all means do add more. But I'm going to read out the following. The word's useless. Comparing with others. The word bad. Less than. And losing motivation. All those things that I've said, what do you think they all have in common? I want to explore this. What do you think all of these phrases, all of these words that you've all shared, what do they all have in common with one another? Now, there's no wrong answer, because what we're doing right now is we're talking about our perspectives as students. Okay, but I'm sure we'll get some really common themes here. So, Lyrics, you said that they are all negative. Okay, so I am going to agree with that. All of those things are negative. So they're all negative things there. And Tia, you've said that when you have too many subjects to revise, you get stressed and anxious. So I'm actually going to add stressed and anxious to that list. So again, I think that really reinforces what Lyrics has said, in that all of these things are negative. Okay. Um, I would also say that they are also quite demotivating. I think all those things can be quite demotivating. But interestingly enough, T, what you've said, and I like that answer, you've said that they're all things you want to resolve and change. Now, when you saying that, I think that's quite an insightful answer, and thank you for sharing that, because I think what that denotes is that for something to be resolved, that then identifies that all of those phrases are a problem, but then wanting to change it, then denotes that you actively want to move on from the problem. You want to see development. And that's what we're all here for, everyone, ladies and gents. We're all here to try and make a positive difference in the way that we approach our studying and how we approach our revision and how we approach our education. So thank you for that. And I'm going to agree. Everything that we've said there are all negatives. And what it demonstrates is that I think generally we tend to have quite a negative attitude towards the idea of taking a break. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this up. It's a little trophy, a little plastic trophy. Okay. Now, I also want all of you to share some answers here. In a classroom of students, who do you think is the most deserving of the trophy? I want to see what all of you say. And I think it'll be really, really interesting to see what some of the answers are. Because I think what this will also feed into is a misconception as to what success and achievement are. So, what do you all think? In a classroom of students, with this plastic trophy here, assuming it wasn't tiny in plastic, which student or what type of student is the student that deserves this the most? What do you think? Now, I'm not actually going to offer any answers here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it to you to answer. So, Lyrics, you have said that it's the person who tries the hardest, no matter if they get the best grades or not. And T, you said that it's people who persevere through their problems. And I like those answers. And I actually agree with those. And those were the answers that I was actually looking for. They are the people who persevere through their problems. Now, in persevering through their problems, what I am going to do is I'm going to bring forward a bit of a quote from Franklin Roosevelt. The quote says, "It is a good thing for everyone who can possibly do so to get away at least once a year for a change of scene. I do not want to get into the position of not being able to see the forest because of the thickness of the trees." Now, what do all of you think about that quote? Now, I'm not claiming us all to be an English literature teacher, but what do we all take away from that quote? From those words of wisdom from Franklin Roosevelt? What do we think? Because I'm going to share some of my words of wisdom that I built up from my time at university, and even now as a hematology and oncology pharmacist. But I want to see what all of you think about what good old Franklin Roosevelt meant from that quote. What do all of you take away from that? What are some of your thoughts? Because it's quite an interesting quote, and I think you can interpret it in a number of ways. I think you can interpret it quite literally, you could interpret it quite figuratively, and I just want to see whether your interpretation is a combination of both or one or the other. And then what I want us to do is think a little bit about how this relates to what we've been talking about thus far. So T, you said that having a change in scenery can be good for you to other your thoughts and to calm yourself down. I would agree with that, or to gather your thoughts. I agree with that. Yeah, because a change in scenery can make a difference in terms of centering yourself. And centering yourself more often than not tends to make you more productive. Wonderful. Do we have any other suggestions at all? Lyrics, have you got any suggestions at all as to what this quote might mean? What's your interpretation? Or if anyone else wants to share their interpretation at all. What do we think? What do we think about what old Franklin Roosevelt suggested? I think, for me anyway, what I take away from that quote is that sometimes when you're in the middle of a problem, it can be really, really challenging to see the bigger picture. And sometimes what you need to do to fix the problem is take yourself away from the problem. Now, that might seem a little bit weird because you'd think instinctively, well, if I don't solve the problem, how does moving away from it solve it? Sometimes it can do, but I'm going to give it a bit of time, see whether anyone else has any suggestions. Um, so, lyrics, you said to step away from the problem. Yeah, so very similar to what I was saying. Now, what I want us to do is I want us to take that quote and then juxtapose it to the list of words that we put together earlier. So we had words like useless, companion, not companion, comparison to others, bad, I can't read my own handwriting, less than, lose motivation, stressed and anxious. And we said that those things were negative, they were demotivating, and we said that they were things that we wanted to resolve and change. We also said that the student that deserves this trophy the most is the student that perseveres through their problems and tries their hardest no matter what they get. Doesn't matter whether they get a 9, doesn't matter whether they get a 3 or a 4. It's the student that tries their absolute best that deserves this. So in theory, what that means is that my question earlier was a trick question. All of you are deserving of this trophy for trying your absolute best. And I want you to hold on to that for a second. And if there was a way, I would pop this through the camera and hand you each one of these. I can't, ultimately, but all of you deserve one of these because you try your absolute best. However, this is where we tie in to Franklin Roosevelt's quote, which is the simple fact that stepping away to find the solution is often the solution in itself. If we want to resolve and change our mentality about how we view breaks, sometimes what we need to do is step away from the work that we're doing. Um, and that is the first step in terms of addressing that mentality. Does everyone agree with me so far? Quick thumbs up in the chat if so, quick thumbs down in the chat if not, but hopefully you all do agree. Thank you, T, for sharing the virtual trophy. That will have to do for now in place of the physical trophy being here in my office. But thank you for sharing the virtual trophy. But does everyone agree with what I was saying there? I see a thumbs up from T. Fantastic. Um, Wonderful lyrics. You also agree. I see a few other people there who are viewing the live stream. Don't be afraid to put a thumbs up and say hello. um, but yes, that is essentially what we're getting to the crux of. Okay. Now, whenever it comes to taking breaks, there are a few tips in mind. Okay. Firstly, one of the things that we discussed before was that we feel guilty when we take breaks. Now, I think it depends on how you take your break and what type of break it is. Now, not all breaks are actually beneficial, and actually, what a lot of science has shown is that a break where, let's say, you might jump on your smartphone, for instance, and scroll through social media, may make you feel guilty because then your attention is focused on something else. And instinctively, I think what we tend to do is we tend to put social media and revision in two very separate boxes. So if you then take a break, and in taking that break, you then scroll through social media, you tend to think, actually, I shouldn't be taking the break. On the other hand, taking other breaks, such as going for a walk, maybe even getting involved in a little bit of exercise or even socializing with friends, can be good ways to take breaks from revision because they're more proactive. They involve you doing something actively, and they engage a different part of your brain and give you satisfaction in a slightly different way. Okay. Now, alternatively, what you could also do is you could try building in regular short breaks as part of your revision. Now, when I was in year 12, and it came to the Easter break, what I would do is I would wake up in the morning, I would after I had breakfast, I'd revise for me 2 hours worked quite well because it made sure I had enough time to sort of get into the mindset, get into the zone, study effectively, and then I would then take a break. And that break would be for half an hour, 45 minutes. Now, for me, I spent my break playing Sonic Adventure 2, for instance. So I remember doing that really vividly on Steam because I had it on my PC at the time. Um, and that was my way of taking a break. Um, or if I didn't do that, I'd read a book or I'd go outside and wander around, get some fresh air. I then come back to work at the time that my break was over. And what I would find was by building in specific points in the day where I would take a break, it meant that one, I could keep track of the work that I had done, but two, I wasn't forcing myself to go on and on and on out of the fear that when I take a break, I'm doing the wrong thing. If you schedule your breaks in, what you tend to find is that that might overcome that feeling of guilt and fear around taking a break and around pacing yourself. So, Lyrics, I can see here that you've said that social media and revision can't go together because that would mess everything up. Well, it's great that you have that level of awareness because now it means that you know that if you take a break and if you schedule a break into your regular revision day, you know that social media is not a part of that break taking, and you may only go on social media at the very end of the day when you then say, right, revision's done for the day, I can now do X, Y, and Z. I can do whatever I like. Okay. But it's good that you have that level of awareness. And if you don't have that level of awareness for anyone else watching, it might be worth building that awareness in. Earlier on, we talked about the importance of creating a great environment to make you more productive. And a lot of you talked about having your phone near you. And one of the action plans that a lot of you put in place was we're going to put the phone away. So it could very well be that we pick up from that and that even in your breaks, you don't go for your phone, you do something else that engages a different part of your brain. So that's something that you could definitely do. Now, Lyrics, you said that if you go on it in the morning, you realize you don't end up revising that day. So that's actually very interesting. And sometimes what you do at the very beginning of the day definitely sets the tone, it sets the pace. Um, So brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. I can see we've had a few more people join as well. Don't be afraid to say hello in the chat. Don't be afraid to get involved either. We're talking all about the importance of taking breaks and how we can sort of really overcome this mentality that taking a break as a student is a bad thing, because it's not at all. It's incredibly, incredibly important. Now, another thing you could do is something called interleaving. Now, interleaving is where, let's say, for instance, you are focused on biology. You may then switch to reading for literature elsewhere, and the former revision may not be exactly the same. So it could very well be that if you have, I don't know whether you still do. I remember when I was at GCSE, I had like a book. It was like A4, A3, somewhere in the middle, and had all these poems that I had to sort of revise for. I remember Carol Ann Duffy was one of the poets. That's a trip down memory lane, and I'd have to read through those poems. So sometimes what I would do was if I got bored of revising chemistry, or rather, let me rephrase that. If I found that I got burnt out of not burning chemistry, yikes, revising chemistry, if I got burned out, I then switch over to reading poems because I like reading. It felt like a break, but I thought to myself, okay, well, I'm still revising in a different form and I'm using a different part of my brain. Now, I would say that is useful if you feel that you haven't got time to take a break. However, what I would say as well is that we don't want to cultivate the mentality that in order to avoid taking breaks, you then revise something else. Because then you're constantly revising and then you never actually take a break. So T, I can see that you said that you still do, so great to know that I'm not super out of the loop when it comes to English language and literature. Um, but lyrics as well. Okay, great. Okay, so similar thing. Ultimately, what's important is that you take the time out you need to take a break. Ultimately, it is impossible for you to work at maximum efficiency if you're tired. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you all a story from when I was at university, and I'm also going to tell you all a story about when I was a freshly qualified hospital pharmacist, because both of them involve me not really prioritizing my need to rest. So at university, I remember I had a chemistry um, summative. So the pharmacy degree had different components, and I had a chemistry one to do. And granted, for chemistry, this was one instance in which I left things a little bit to the last minute. And I put everything together, and I thought it was fine. But then my friend told me, well, actually, your formatting is wrong. So what I then did was I then spent the entire night redoing this entire summative, and I didn't sleep at all. I think I only slept for about half an hour, but essentially I didn't really sleep. Um, and once I got the assignment done, I then ended up feeling fairly ill for about 3 or 4 days afterwards because I was so sleep deprived. And ultimately, what that demonstrated was that trying to get everything done in one go and not taking breaks, it doesn't help you because you end up burning yourself out. Now, my hospital pharmacist story is very similar, and I think this one came from my me being really, really eager. So, I don't know how many of you know any hospital pharmacists. You might do, you might not. But sometimes what we'll need to do is something called an on-call shift, where you carry around like a little pager. Obviously, the hospital have your number as well, and you have to be the point of call as the pharmacist for the whole hospital. So if a ward needs some medication, if a doctor or a nurse needs some advice, or if there's an emergency that needs pharmacist input, they could call you. They can call you at any point in the night. So from the moment you get home to the very next morning, they could call you. And when I first qualified, I was really, really excited about being a hospital pharmacist, and I realized, well, I carried a lot of responsibility. It's going to be really, really cool. So what I did was I took nearly everyone's on-call shifts possible. So I ended up being on call for like 5 days straight. I think I'm probably even underestimating that, but it was the number of shifts I was doing was insane. And it got to the point where I had a really, really bad on-call shift where I ended up having to come into the hospital in the middle of the night. It was 2 in the morning, and then I then drove back home on the M25. I then got paged again by A&E, and I had to get ready at 4 in the morning to get up to go back in, only for me to then realise that actually, um, you know, actually I was no longer needed. But then because I lived so far away from the hospital, I had to wake up at 6 in the morning anyway. So cumulatively, I only ended up having about 2 hours of sleep, and it got to the point where when I then got to work, the senior pharmacist said, "You're too tired to come to work, so actually, it's not safe for you to practice as a pharmacist. So you need to go home." So ultimately, what I learned from that was sometimes going over and above and continuing to do everything possible isn't actually helpful, because then it meant that I then couldn't work during the day on that day, which meant that we were that much shorter in staff. Does that do both of those stories make sense? I don't know. Maybe it struck a chord with some of you. Maybe you've experienced, maybe not exactly the same thing, but you've experienced something similar. What I've had to learn is that working continuously at some point burns you out. And that's not because you're not capable. Every student that's watching this at the moment is more than capable of achieving what it is that they want to achieve. But you need to pace yourself and you need to take breaks for it, because if you don't, you end up burning out, and then you stop yourself physically being able to be the best student that you can be. And that's the important thing. Yeah? So, what does everyone think about those stories? Does everyone agree with them? Has anyone learned anything from them? It'd be really interesting to see what some of you say, um, because ultimately, um, what we tend to find is when we continuously work and work and work, we try and almost work through fatigue, and it's just not helpful and it's not sustainable. So it'd be really interesting to see what some of you say about those respective stories. What do all of you think? I know one bit of learning for me was definitely um, not to take as many on-call shifts as possible. But it was also I learned the importance of taking a break. It was incredibly important that I did that, and it's incredibly important that you do that as well as students. And I know at GCSE, it's really challenging because you've got loads and loads of subjects to revise for, and at A level, for those of you who are doing your A levels now, it's also really challenging because a lot of the stuff that you're learning is really, really complex. But that doesn't mean that you should have to sacrifice your well-being and your mental health and your need to rest for those grades, because it doesn't add up. And actually, what you tend to find is you have a better chance of resting, because in that way you can then jump back into that work head on, putting in 110%. So lyrics, you said that work matters, but it matters the same amount as physical and mental health. Without healthy mental health, you couldn't work to the best of your ability. Wise words of wisdom. I'm really glad that you agree with me on that one. And T, you said that when you work, even though you're really tired, it burns you out, but you still make yourself, so you still work yourself even more, and that's the worst decision of your life. And this is it. And this is what it comes down to. I think we're all in agreement here that trying to work through fatigue is not sustainable. And particularly nowadays, it isn't. It's important that you take care of yourself, and it's important that you ensure that your mental health is prioritized. Interestingly enough, one question that a lot of employers may ask you when it comes to applying for jobs is something to the effect of, where does work rank for you in terms of priorities? And a lot of people will say, oh, it's number one. But in a recent interview that I had, I actually said it was number three. Number one was my mental health and my well-being was the most important thing to me, with number two being the relationship that I then have in my personal life. And the reason I said that was that if they weren't seen to, then I couldn't perform well at work. And that's really important. And I want to share that with all of you. So as students, what do you think you're going to take away from this study squad? What are you going to do differently? Are you going to schedule breaks into your everyday schedule so that it doesn't feel so you're doing something bad, rather um, rather than doing something that's important? Or are you just going to tell yourself it's not a bad thing to have a break? I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to take 15, 20 minutes to do something else entirely, and then I'll come back to it. It will be really interesting to see what all of you say. What are all of your takeaway tactics from this study squad? So, Lyrics, you said that you found out yesterday that your body gets triggered if you become really stressed, and it makes you really ill. And that is the case. That is definitely the case. Stress is something that I think we often cite as, I'm stressed, but stress can make you ill. And it's really important that you do things and you engage in practices that allow you to rest and to recover. It's incredibly, incredibly important. And so, if there's anything at all that I want all of you to take away from this Teddy squad, it's that fact alone. So please remember that. But thank you for sharing that, Lyrics. And hopefully, what you'll take away from the study squad is that you're going to make sure that you prioritize your well-being and you prioritize breaks. So T, usually you're going to prioritize your breaks, you're not going to get too stressed, and you're not going to feel bad about having a small break, and get to sleep well. Love that. Absolutely brilliant. I know it's the same trophy as before, but I'd happily give you a trophy for that answer. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Lyrics, you said that always, if it helps people not become, well, I think ultimately, lyrics, what I would say to that is you have that awareness now, and having that awareness then means that you can get better. Okay, we all have room for improvement, and I know that I'm running this study squad about taking breaks and the importance of taking breaks. But even I do find myself thinking to myself, when was the last time I took a break? Sometimes I do find that I'm tired at the end of the day to a point where I'm not all that happy about it. Um, Interestingly enough, after the study squad, my plan is I'll drive home from work and then I will probably play some Sonic Frontiers this evening as a way of de-stressing. It's really important to take breaks because without taking a break, you can't reset yourself to 100%. When we have phones, when they're running low on battery, we recharge them. And we don't think for a second to not do that. We shouldn't be any different in that regard. Recharge yourself in the same way that you recharge your phone. Because what can you do with a phone that has no battery? It can't function the way it's supposed to. And if you're not recharged, you can't achieve the grades that you are capable of achieving in the way that you're supposed to. Does that make sense? Does everyone agree with that? Can I get a quick thumbs up in the chat if we all agree with those words of wisdom? That if I can't recharge myself in the same way that I recharge my phone, I can't work to the best of my ability. So, I see 2 thumbs up so far. T and Lyrics, thank you for that. Brilliant. I'm also going to give myself a thumbs up for that because I definitely agree with myself there. Um, and if any of you are feeling a bit shy and you don't necessarily want to put a thumbs up in the live chat, then just put a thumbs up at the screen because it's important that you remember that you need to give yourself the time to recharge. Fantastic. And as always, we're always at my tutor to support you. Okay. Now, I know for a fact that I will make times for students for free meetings. And even if a free meeting doesn't necessarily become regular tuition, if you want a free meeting where you just vent about the challenges you're having with revision, then by all means, that's absolutely fine. I'll give you some guidance on revision. And there are loads and loads of staff at my tutor. There are tutors at my tutor that are there to support you through your journey with your GCSEs and your A levels. So never think that you're alone when it comes to learning how to take breaks and learning how to prioritize your time. Also, remember that your parents have probably been exactly in the position that you're in. We all go through that experience of stress and not knowing how to balance, and we grow from it. And it's important that we share that wisdom and we share that growth. So don't be afraid to ask for help. It's incredibly important that you do so. Um, and lyrics, interestingly, you said that it's something that you'll have to practice, and it is a practice. It's about changing a behavior entirely, and changing that behavior means that it's in a long-term practice. Once it becomes part of your routine, it will become as natural as breathing, and that's really important. We have to normalize taking breaks. We have to normalize prioritizing our well-being and our mental health. Because again, if the aim is that you achieve a 9, an 8, a 7, a 6, whatever your aspirational goal is, you cannot do that if you are not 100% charged and ready for the exam. That's the reality of it. Yeah? So, that's everything that I want to say about rest and the importance of balancing your mental health and prioritizing your mental health. But now, like I promised, we're going to go through some GCSE biology past paper questions. Um, Again, really, really great to get some interaction in the chat. So by all means, do put some answers there as we go through each question. I will be giving some tips on how to answer these types of questions, particularly 6 markers. And then we will go into the last 5 to 10 minutes of just some casual Q&As, and then we will call it an evening there. Lyrics, you said that it's like carving a new path that's going to take ages, but it's going to be worth it. And that's what it's all about. everyone here, your education is a path. You are carving a new path, a new direction to take your work in and to take your mindset in. And if you change that mindset for the better, you change your mindset to one that supports you and allows you to take breaks without feeling guilty. Just think of the miraculous things that you'll be able to do. That's all I'll say in that regard. So, um, let's have a look at some of these questions then. Farming techniques have changed in recent years. Describe why more land is being used for farming, how increased farming has decreased biodiversity. I am going to let you guys have a think about this question. I'm going to give you guys about 2-3 minutes or so. I did just hear a knock at my door, so I am going to pause this really briefly. Give me 2 seconds. I will be right back. Hope that's okay. Okay, we are right back. So let's see. Did anyone have any answers to this question? Farming techniques, however, changed in recent years. Describe why more land is being used for farming and how increased farming has decreased biodiversity. So, lyrics, you've said farming, agriculture, then food, then money, and that's all you can think about at the moment. Absolutely fine. It's the end of the day, so maybe doing part of a question at the end of the day isn't necessarily the best thing to do. Not a problem at all. But thank you for that engagement. Very good submission there. So more than happy with that. Does anyone have any other suggestions at all as to how we might go about answering this question? Again, I am going to talk through how these questions are answered shortly. So if you can't think of anything at the moment, absolutely fine. And the advice that I give can be applied to other types of past paper questions also, particularly these 6 markers, because I know that these pesky 6 markers can always prove a little bit challenging. So I think with these questions, and this goes for all past paper questions, and this is something that I talked about last week, and I'll reinforce again. Always read the question. Now, I know you probably heard that 1,000,001 times, but I'm going to break down what that actually means. It means getting an understanding and forming an understanding of what the examiner wants you to do. So, here they want you to describe. If I asked you all to define the word describe, what do all of you think that means? What does it mean to describe something? And again, I know that might seem like a really obvious question, but I do want all of you to share your thoughts. If I asked you to describe something, what would you say that involves? So, for instance, I could say that the wall behind me, just over there, I could describe it as a white wall. It's very clean. There is a board on it, um, and some papers. So I could say that there. T, you say that it's like saying what something looks like. So I'd agree with that. That's describing, isn't it? So when we describe things, we are saying what they are. So we're nearly listing things, or we're talking things through, okay? But we're not quite using words like because and therefore, because that then dips into an explanation. So here, we've been told that farm techniques have changed in recent years. Describe why more land is being used for farming and how increased farming has decreased biodiversity. So, we could say there's been an increase in population, which therefore well, I guess in describing, it might not be the best example now that I think about it, because then that's a bit of an explanation. But I suppose the word why then sort of suggests a bit of an explanation. So with these 6 markers in particular, where you might be wondering, well, what do I actually write to get all the marks? break down your answer into small bite-sized chunks that are very easy to follow and that flow on from one another. So, firstly, there's a greater population size. That's my first thing that I would say here. Greater population means that there's a greater demand for food. That's the second thing. Greater demand for food means there's a greater demand for agriculture, and therefore a greater need for more land. So that's 4 points that I've made there. And does that make sense? How one point has moved on to the next? When it comes to these 6 markers, or even 4 markers in biology or in chemistry or in physics, really the key is for each point that you make to follow one from the next and to break it down into really simple, easy to understand concepts that are linked to one another. That really demonstrates to the examiner that you know your stuff. So that's what I would say there. That's the important thing. And if we actually have a look at the mark scheme for this paper, because I actually have it up now and I'm actually going to have a look to see what it says. Interestingly enough, the mark scheme says for the first part of the question that, let's see, increasing population requires more food, crops and livestock for food, farming crops for biofuels, increase in the need for land use. Okay? So the mark scheme has listed some of the points that we went through in breaking down that question. Now, the second part of the question is, well, how has increased farming decreased biodiversity? Well, we can say that using more land results in more deforestation. More deforestation then results in possibly more habitats being destroyed. They're no longer being upkept. You could say there's a loss of hedgerows, for instance, to make more fields larger. It could very well be that if there's a change in habitat, that then results in maybe certain populations of animals moving elsewhere. And those animals moving elsewhere then decrease the amount of biodiversity in an area, which then results in less biodiversity. So, T, you've asked what topic this is for Combined Science Trilogy. This is... Ooh, hang on a second. What? I'd have to have a look at your specification. I'll tell you what, towards the end of the session, I will pull that up from your spec. I think I've taken this one from, you know how with AQA you have the individual components. I think I've taken this from a biology paper rather than the combined science one. But I will have a look at your specification and I will have a look at which topic this is from. It is an AQA paper, but I will have a look to see what topic it's actually in for you. Okay, hopefully that's okay. But did going through that question make sense? Hopefully it made sense for all of you. And even if, I know this paper is biology AQA, it's not quite combined science trilogy, but the techniques that we've utilized here can be applied across the board. Taking 6 markers and breaking them down into small, easy to follow points has more merit than writing loads and loads and loads and hoping that what you said gets you the marks. So that's what I would say there. Okay. So that's the important thing to remember. Do I think this would be in triple science biology? Let me have a look at your specification. So we're looking for Combined Science Trilogy. I've actually got it bookmarked in Google Chrome because I refer to it a lot. So let's have a look here. Specification. I think there is a topic on biodiversity in the AQA Combined Science specification. I would just need to see where it is in particular. So that's right. So in biology, it's topic 5, which is homeostasis and response. No, sorry, not homeostasis and response. Topic 6, inheritance, variation, and evolution. So you'd likely have some content on biodiversity there. If not, it would be topic 7, which would be ecology. So right towards the end of the specification. Oh, so triple science doesn't say combined science on it. Fine. Okay, so they're different. So you're doing the separate sciences. If you're doing the separate sciences, then yes, I think this would be in that specification. But T, to answer your question, the combined science trilogy, this would be topic 6 or topic 7, or somewhere between the two, since topic 6 looks at inheritance, which often ties in quite nicely with biodiversity and genetics, and 7 looks at ecology, where you have biodiversity. Does that make sense for everyone? More than happy to answer more questions towards the end, though, in this short little Q&A bit. Here's a nice, easier question. DNA is a polymer of nucleotides. Why is DNA described as a polymer? Why would we describe DNA as a polymer? What do we think? Why is DNA a polymer? Feel free to sort of, well, not shout out words, but type whatever you like in the live chat. Why is DNA a polymer? Polymer is made up of more than one thing. No, I'd agree with that. Very good. So a polymer is made up of more than one thing. That's the important bit to remember. It is, so remember that a polymer is a molecule made up of many smaller units. Okay, so that is why we would define DNA as a polymer. Okay, and remember, in saying that, your DNA polymer is made out of multiple DNA mononucleotides. So those are your monomers. Okay, fantastic. Well done for answering that one. Here's another describe question. So again, just because I'm conscious of time, in terms of addressing this describe question, this is a 4 marker. So it's really just about trying to get a better understanding of what it is the examiner has asked you for. So in terms of describing the structure of the nucleotide, here they have just highlighted this individual component. Now it can be really, really easy to look at that entire diagram and think, I need to describe the whole thing, and then go off on a tangent about how DNA is a polymer, how it's made up of multiple units. But remember that in the question, they've marked out one section of the nucleotide. So they've noted out one nucleotide there, and they've asked you just to describe the structure of a nucleotide. So here, what you would want to talk about is you'd want to talk about the fact that you have a phosphate group. You want to talk about how the phosphate is attached to a sugar. You want to talk about the fact that you've got bases there, so adenine, thymine, guanine, or cytosine. And you also want to talk about how you have your sugar here. So this is your sugar unit there in the middle. So the pentagon or the pentose sugar. So that's what you'd want to talk about there. And finally, I'm going to sort of finish on a suggest question. Now, suggest questions I think are always a bit challenging because they're a bit off the wall. But the one thing I'd say to boost your confidence with suggest questions is that they want you to sort of apply what you've learned about the topic to this specific instance. So in biology, you may have very well learned about the brain, and you will have learned about how different parts of the brain do different things. So they tell you about a functional MRI scanner, which you may never have heard of before. But that's fine, because they told you. An fMRI scanner allows a person to move while the scanner makes images of the person's brain activity. And they want us to suggest how an fMRI scanner could help find out more about the brain damage a person has. Well, it could very well be that in a patient who unfortunately has brain damage, they may get them to get involved in certain types of activity, and depending on whether or not that part of the image lights up or not, may determine the extent of the damage. Okay, so all I've done there is I've used my knowledge of the brain and different parts of the brain getting involved in different activities. The rest of my knowledge there, I just got from the question. And it's just about bringing the two together, bridging it all together. And that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining another study squad. It's been absolutely wonderful having all of you here this evening. Again, it is a shame that this is the penultimate one. Next week is the last one, so it would be great to see as many of you there as possible. Next week is going to be focused on. I'll need to check my schedule. What is next week focused on? Next week is focused on. Let me have a quick look. Let me see. Let me see. Let's see. Ah, so next week is about note taking. Although interestingly enough, this week should have been about. So this week should have been about note taking. Next week should have been about rest and relaxation. Funnily enough, so next week will be about note taking, and this week's been about rest and relaxation. So funny that. But thank you for joining. It's been absolutely wonderful. I am going to stick around for 5 minutes or so. So if anyone does have any questions, then by all means, more than welcome to ask. Um, T, you said that you're really nice and you hope you do another study squad. You've loved them. Oh, well, thank you. Like I always say, there is no study squad without the squad. I can't be a squad of one. So seeing all of you join every week and seeing some of you um, and seeing some of you join regularly and seeing new can't English at the moment. Seeing some new members join the squad as well, and seeing regulars as well. It's always really really heartwarming. As you can tell, I'm super energetic and I'm super passionate about education. So the fact that um, you know um, a lot of you have joined and you've sort of been with me through this journey has been really, really heartwarming. So thank you so much. It's not a problem at all. Um, and Lyrics, you're more than welcome. I'm glad that you found these sessions helpful as well. Um, and hopefully, I do get to do more in the future. I'm sure. I mean, this is the first time that my teacher is doing these study squads. I'm sure there will be more in the future. It could very well be that some other tutors do some study squads as a way of getting more tutors involved. Um, but who knows? We could make this a regular thing. I mean, hopefully, my tutor do make it a regular thing, especially if a lot of you find it useful. It could be that I do a chemistry one. It could be that I do a biology one. It could be that I do another study skills one. What do all of you think? If you guys wanted me to do another study squad, what would you want to see? Would it be biology? Would it be chemistry? Or would it be study skills? I say those three because those are really the only ones that I think I could do with confidence. Lyrics, you said that you joined halfway through, but you're glad that you got to experiment them, and they helped a lot. Fantastic. I'm really, really glad um, that you found them useful. And I'm glad that you joined halfway through. It's been lovely seeing you in the past few weeks. It's been brilliant. T, you said study skills, and Lyrics, you said chemistry or study skills. Okay, well, maybe we could do both. Maybe we could have regular study squads alternating weeks. Chemistry one week, study skills the next. Or maybe a bit of both. I'm sure we could figure something out. Definitely, definitely. So, what does everyone have planned for the rest of the evening? I mentioned before, my plan is to. Well, actually, no. When I get home today, I have. Let me see. Well, what was it? I did say I was going to play Sonic Frontiers this evening. Funnily enough, and this reinforces the need to take breaks. I started playing it. When was it? I actually pre-ordered it to get it on the day of release, but then because of work, I never made the time to play it. And even in saying that, saying work is an excuse, I should have made the time to take a break, like I've told all of you today. So I started playing it Monday, um, and I got through the first bit, and then I just fell asleep. So I think today's been quite well paced. So my plan is to thoroughly enjoy the game today, but then get to sleep in good time because I do have work tomorrow. T, you said that you're taking a break and then you're going to have an early night because you have an exam tomorrow. You have an art exam tomorrow. All the best. I'm sure you'll absolutely smash it. Like I mentioned before, I cannot draw for my life, but I can appreciate good art when I see it. I'm sure you'll smash it. Just do your absolute best, and do let me know how it goes in the next study squad. And lyrics, you said that you're going to chill today because you've got no school tomorrow. Fantastic. So you don't have anything to do, so you'll just binge watch something. Well, you know, definitely deserved. Take the break. You deserve it. And I think one thing I want us all to do is stop using the phrase of, "Oh, you've earned a break." We don't earn breaks. We're owed them. We need breaks in order to keep being the best Jews that we can be. So that's what I would say. So enjoy that break this evening. Definitely enjoy that break. Ah, dearie me, dearie me. I'm not looking forward to driving in the cold though. That's going to be a bit. Not. That's not going to be too much fun. But then, granted, I'm in a car, so I guess I can't complain too much. But yes, right. So I am going to leave it there for this evening, ladies and gents. Um, Probably be the same setup next week as well. Um, but it's absolutely fine. It will be the Lost Study Squad for now. I won't say forever. I'll just say for now because you never know. We might do something again like this in the future. Um, but it's been absolutely brilliant. It's been great having all of you here this evening um, to talk all about the importance of taking a break because it is important. Join us next week. We're going to talk all about how to make notes more effective, really. And then we will call it a day there for study squad skills or study skills, study skills squads for now, anyway. Until we start it up again in the near or distant future. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Have a lovely evening, everyone. As you can see, Merry Christmas as well. I'm feeling super festive with the hat on. And I will see all of you next week at the same time. So do join again at 5 p.m. on a Thursday. Um, and I look forward to seeing all of you there. Okay, but take care. Have a lovely evening. Stay safe as well. Bye, everyone.